This story begins the spring of 2020. I'm looking for a new JL Recon and I find one at a dealership in Seattle. So we hop on a plane, fly out, pick up the new Recon, and begin driving it home. Driving the new Recon Seattle to Chicago was a great way to break it in and allowed us to stop by Moab, Utah to run a few quick trails and get a baseline feel for what we're working with stock before we start the new build. Alright, before we jump into my JL build, here's a little backstory. Here's a picture of me at the summit of Imogene Pass with my 2016 JK. This build served as a basis for a lot of the knowledge I gained on how I'm going to go forward with my next JL build. Call this the build ethos, if you will. The build ethos is in fact the blueprint for how the build proceeds. The ethos will inform every mod we make. The trick here is to sit and think long and hard on how you want to use your Jeep. This will ensure that on your major mods you only do them once. My plan is to create a capable rock crawler as well as a competent overlander, keeping the stock Rubicon axles as well as steel bumpers. Now, let's take a quick look at what's on my build. Alright, let's jump in. Starting up front, this is the Maximus 3 Stealth license plate bracket. I ran this on my JK and loved it. Keeps the license plate up out of the way for wheeling. Quadratec's Maglite flashlight holder, mounted here. Some bling via these Mopar stainless steel door seal covers, as well as pedal set. This is more Offroad's quick release fire extinguisher bracket. And from Jeep's performance catalog, these are the light mounting brackets for the stock Rubicon brush guard. I use these to mount a pair of Baja Designs LP4s. Next, I started prepping for the Warn winch to go on the OEM steel bumper. Remember, this is post-COVID and we're starting to experience some serious supply chain issues. It took a couple months for my Warn winch to finally show up. I used Artec Industries winch plate bracket. This thing is super beefy. And here's how it looks, all put together, waiting for that winch. Next, I added Mopar's tailgate table. I decided to take this idea a little bit further and customize the surface. This is what I came up with. It works great for work surface, food prep, etc. And to protect those differentials from the rocks, we added AEV's diff covers. These are both functional and beautiful. The Warn Xeon 10S finally shows up, so we can get that bumper off and get this winch installed. Next, it was time for some A-pillar lights. We use these KC highlight brackets to mount Diode Dynamics SS3 pods. I never was a fan of the amber marker lights on the front fenders, so we changed those out using the Diode Dynamics kit. Much better. Now it's time to head west down to St. George, Utah and Dixie 4-wheel drive to have the lift installed. Here's what's being added to the JL during this phase of work. Fox 2.0 bump stops, Metal Cloak's 3.5-inch game changer lift, Falcon SP2 3.3 fast adjust shocks, as well as the Falcon Nexus 2.2 steering stabilizer. For wheels, we've selected Fuel Offroad's 17x9 covert beadlocks, and for rubber, we're running Nitto Ridge Grapper 37x12.5s. To carry the weight of that 37-inch spare, we're going to run TerraFlex's Alpha spare tire kit. This mounts directly to my Mopar heavy-duty reinforcement kit that came with my Recon. We are also upgrading the front steering linkage, adding Metal Cloak's full heavy-duty steering linkages. And here's a look at the first full flex after everything's been installed, checking bump stops, clearances, etc. Look at the flex on this bad boy. Not bad for a short arm kit that rides and handles better than stock. And here's before and after pics to see the transformation. Now we're talking. While we were still down in St. George, Dixie invited us on a night run, which allowed us to see the capabilities of the new build. We came away mighty impressed. All right, build it, test it. I love this methodology. Back home, the mods continue. Here we installed the ham radio from my previous JK build, as well as adding a new Cobra 75 CB. Both radio head units are located under the front seats. The build up to this point I'm going to call Stage 1. Now let's jump in and take a look what we did on Stage 2, all determined by how we're using the Jeep. With the end caps removed from my standard steel bumpers, it exposes the back of the fog light housing, so I created these ABS plastic covers. Along about this time, I lost one of my best friends, Coda. I keep her tags attached to the roll bar, so she's always riding with me. After a lot of research, we added Expedition 1's Mule mid-rack. Next up, we added Baja Design's rock lights. Next, we added Oracle's rear bumper LEDs. I have these hardwired into my reverse circuit. Next up, for performance, we added Ultimate 9's throttle controller. This allows us to dial in the pedal performance and makes a huge difference in the way the Jeep drives. Now it was really time to change the look of the Jeep by adding Rugged Ridge's fender chop kit. I went with the Rugged Ridge fender chop kit because it allowed me to keep my stock inner fender liners as well as the molding on the outside edge of the fender. And now it was time to turn our attention to cargo management. For this, we selected American Adventure Labs cargo shelf. Using a pair of KC Highlight Cyclones, I created custom lighting for the cargo area. Now it was time to add armor to the JL. This is Artec Industries full JL belly pan in aluminum. The Artec system gives you a completely smooth belly pan, and you actually gain 3/4 of an inch of ground clearance. Now for some onboard air, we're going to be installing ARB's Twin. For this install, we're using American Adventure Labs dual ARB compressor mount. This system installs a compressor in that rear cargo floor cubby and has the ability to add an extra battery. The remote bracket puts everything in easy reach and allowed me to add an extra electrical circuit for the rear of the Jeep. Next, I added the mass storage platform. Prior to this install, I added sound deadening to the cargo area floor pan. This is the mass platform system installed, and this is where I located the light switch for the overhead lights. When we're not out running trails, I use a cargo liner to cover the mass platform. To illuminate the rear of the Jeep, I mounted a Baja Designs rock light to the rear of the cargo glass. And here it is in use. You can see the area being lit in this shot. Time to hit the trails again, test it all out. I feel like every time we go out on a trail run, we learn something. And then it was time to add one of my favorite mods to the build, RockSlide Engineering's Gen 3 step sliders. More LED lighting on the roof rack. Testing that lighting at camp. Added my Rotopacks to the roof rack, as well as Rhino Rack's Stow-It utility holders. Here's how we're using those. Along the way, we replaced my windshield. Added ditch lights to the A-pillar. Then we added the Maximus 3 XLP hoop and moved the LP4s inside that. While at EJS, we stopped by Dixie 4-wheel drive in Moab, and Milt Thompson installed 48 gears in the Jeep. They're perfect with the 37s. Next, I was looking for a great way to carry this 45-quart Arctic cooler, and American Adventure Labs had us covered here. Their fridge slider works perfectly for this. Looking for a little more performance, we added Holley's Intech intake system and a custom 3-inch catback high-tuck exhaust. With the 2-liter now breathing better, we picked up performance gains that you can feel. The results were excellent. Upgraded the front drive shaft with the new Adams 1310. Then it was time again to hit the road, wheel it some more, test everything out. Super happy with the way things are working on the build. Then we decided to change up the whole color scheme of the build, going with a new set of Fuel Off-Road block beadlocks in bronze. I think this combination works great. For a little added security, we added lace fits hood lock system. Parking next to a stock Jeep reminded me just how far the build had come. Added more LEDs to my roof rack. Testing the new lighting off-road showed we made good gains. Added RockSlide Engineering's rear hitch step slider. This adds protection coming off of big shelves, as well as providing an easy way to step up to the roof rack. Next, we added Metal Cloak's rear DuraSpring bump stops for a little more axle protection. Now to the front of the Jeep, looking for more strength, we added Dynatrac heavy-duty ball joints with Reed Racing steering knuckles. For additional confidence in the off-road environment, it was time to add more armor. Here's Artec's rear lower control arm skids. Metal Cloak's front axle disconnect skid. To beef up the steering and add strength, we added Metal Cloak's track bar reinforcement bracket as well as sector shaft brace. Keeping on the topic of steering, we added Apex Design's steering boost kit, allowing us to easily turn the 37s locked and off-road. Now let's take a look at how we've been using our JL. can find additional video reviews of many of the mods we did on the channel playlist. Until next time, stay safe and be well.